Page 260 continued. William Makepeace Thackeray, Makepeace, Thackeray, Thackray, 1811 to 1863, para. As the two most successful novelists of their day, it is natural for us, as it was for their personal friends and admirers, to compare Dickens and Thackeray with respect to their life and work and their attitude toward the world in which they lived. Dickens, after a desperately hard struggle in his boyhood, without friends or higher education, comes into manhood cheery, self-confident, energetic, filled with the joy of his work. Page 261. And in the world which had at first treated him so harshly, he finds good everywhere, even in the jails and in the slums, simply because he is looking for it. Thackeray, after a boyhood spent in the best of English schools with money, friends, and comforts of every kind, faces life timidly, distrustfully, and dislikes the literary work which makes him famous. He has a gracious and lovable personality, is kind of heart, and reveres all that is pure and good in life. Yet he is almost cynical toward the world which uses him so well and finds shams, deceptions, vanities everywhere because he looks for them. One finds what one seeks in this world, but it is perhaps significant that Dickens sought his golden fleece among plain people and Thackeray in high society. The chief difference between the two novelists, however, is not one of environment but of temperament. Put Thackeray in a workhouse and he will still find material for another book of snobs. Put Dickens in society and he cannot help finding undreamed of possibilities among bewigged and bepowdered high lords and ladies. For Dickens is romantic and emotional and interprets the world largely through his imagination. Thackeray is the realist and moralist who judges solely by observation and reflection. He aims to give us a true picture of the society of his day, and as he finds it pervaded by intrigues and snobbery, he proceeds to satirize it and point out its moral evils. In his novels, he is influenced by Swift and Fielding, Fielding, but he is entirely free from the bitterness of the one and the coarseness of the other, and his satire is generally softened by a noble tenderness. Taken together, the novels of Dickens and Thackeray give us a remarkable picture of all classes of English society in the middle of the 19th century. Para. Works of Thackeray. The beginner will do well to omit the earlier satires of Thackeray, written while he was struggling to earn a living from the magazines, and open Henry Esmond, Esmond, 1852, his most perfect novel, though not the most widely known and read. The fine historical and literary flavor of his story is one of its most marked characteristics, and only one who knows something of the history and literature of the 18th century can appreciate its value. The hero, Colonel Esmond, relates his own story, carrying the reader through the courts and camps of Queen Anne's reign, and giving the most complete and accurate picture of a past age that has ever appeared in a novel. Thackeray is, as we have said, a realist and he begins his story by adopting the style and manner of a scholarly gentleman of the period he is describing. He has an extraordinary knowledge of 18th century literature, and he reproduces its style in detail, going so far as to insert in his narrative an alleged essay from the Tatler, T-A-T-L-E-R. And so perfectly is it done that it is impossible to say wherein it differs from the style of Addison and Steele. Para. In his matter also, Thackeray is realistic, reflecting not the pride and pomp of war, which are largely delusions, but its brutality and barbarism, which are all too real. Painting generals and leaders not as the newspaper heroes to whom we are accustomed, but as moved by intrigues, petty jealousies, and selfish ambitions, showing us the great Duke of Marlborough not as the military hero, the idol of war-crazed multitudes, but as without personal honor and governed by despicable avarice. In a word, Thackeray gives us the, quote, backstairs, unquote, view of war, which is, as a rule, totally neglected in our histories. When he deals with the literary men of the period, he uses the same frank realism, showing us Steele and Addison and other leaders not with halos about their heads as popular authors, but in slippers and dressing gowns, smoking a pipe in their own rooms, or else growing tipsy and hilarious in the taverns, just as they appeared in daily life. Both in style and in matter, therefore, Esmond deserves to rank as probably the best historical novel in our language. Para. The plot of the story is, like most of Thackeray's plots, very slight but perfectly suited to the novelist's purpose. The plans of his characters fail, their ideals grow dim, there is a general disappearance of youthful ambitions, there is a love story at the cook's center, but the element of romance which furnishes the light and music and fragrance of love is inconspicuous. The hero, after 10 years of devotion to a young woman, a paragon of beauty, finally marries her mother and ends with a few pious observations concerning heaven's mercy and his own happy lot. Such an ending seems disappointing, almost bizarre in view of the romantic novels to which we are accustomed. But we must remember that Thackeray's purpose was to paint life as he saw it, and that in life men and things often take a different way from that described in romances, page 262. As we grow acquainted with Thackeray's characters, we realize that no other ending was possible to his story and conclude that his plot, like his style, is perhaps as near perfection as a realistic novelist can ever come. Para. Vanity Fair 1847-1848 is the best known of Thackeray's novels. It was his first great work and was intended to express his own views of the social life about him and to protest against the overdrawn heroes of popular novels. He takes for his subject that Vanity Fair to which Christian and faithful were conducted on their way to the heavenly city, as recorded in Pilgrim's Progress. In this fair there are many different booths given over to the sale of, quote, all sorts of vanities, stop, unquote, comma, unquote, and as we go from one to another, we come in contact with, quote, juggling, comma, cheats, comma, games, comma, plays, comma, fools, comma, apes, comma, knaves, Knaves, comma, rogues, comma, and that of every kind, stop, unquote. Evidently, this is a picture of one side of social life, but the difference between Bunyan and Thackeray is simply this, that Bunyan made Vanity Fair a small incident in a long journey, a place through which most of us pass on our way to better things, while Thackeray, describing high society is in his own day, makes it a place of long sojourn, wherein his characters spend the greater part of their lives. Thackeray styles the work, quote, a novel without a hero, unquote, stop. The whole action of the story, which is without plot or development, revolves about two women, Amelia, a meek creature of the milk and water type, and Becky Sharp, a keen, unprincipled intriguer, who lets nothing stand in the way of her selfish desire to get the most out of the fools who largely constitute society. On the whole, it is the most powerful but not the most wholesome of Thackeray's works. Para. In his second important novel, Pendennis, Pendennis, 1849-1850, we have a continuation of the satire on society begun in Vanity Fair. This novel, which the beginner should read after Esmond, is interesting to us for two reasons. Because it reflects more of the details of Thackeray's life than all his other writings, and because it contains one powerfully drawn character who is a perpetual reminder of the danger of selfishness. The hero is, quote, neither angel nor imp, IMP, unquote, in Thackeray's words, but the typical young man of society whom he knows thoroughly and whom he paints exactly as he is, a careless, good-natured, but essentially selfish person who goes through life intent on his own interests. Pendennis is a profound moral study and the most powerful arraignment, ARRAIGNMENT, of well-meaning selfishness in our literature, and even accepting George Eliot's Romola, which it suggests. Para. Two other novels, The Newcomes, 1855, and The Virginians, 1859, complete the list of Thackeray's great works of fiction. The former is a sequel to Pendennis and the latter to Henry Esmond, and both share the general fate of sequels in not being quite equal in power or interest to their predecessors. The Newcomes, NEWCOMES, however, deserves a very high place, some critics indeed placing it at the head of the author's works. Like all Thackeray's novels, it is a story of human frailty, but here the author's innate gentleness and kindness are seen at their best, and the hero is perhaps the most genuine and lovable of all his characters. Para. Thackeray is known in English literature as an essayist as well as a novelist. His English humorous and The Four Georges are among the finest essays of the 19th century. In the former especially, Thackeray shows not only a wide knowledge but an extraordinary understanding of his subject. Apparently this 19th century writer knows Addison, Fielding, Swift, Smollett, and other great writers of the past century almost as intimately as one knows his nearest friend. and he gives us the fine flavor of their humor in a way which no other writer, save perhaps Lamb, has ever rivaled. The Four Georges is in a vein, vein, of delicate satire, and presents a rather unflattering picture of four of England's rulers and of the courts in which they moved. Both these works are remarkable for their exquisite style, their gentle humor, their keen literary criticisms, and for the intimate knowledge and sympathy which makes the people of a past age live once more in the written pages. Para. General characteristics. In treating of Thackeray's view of life, as reflected in his novels, critics vary greatly, and the following summary must be taken not as a positive judgment, but only as an attempt to express the general impression of his works on an uncritical reader. He is first of all a realist who paints life as he sees it. As he says himself, quote, "I have no brains above my eyes, semicolon. I describe what I see, stop," unquote. His pictures of certain types, notably the weak and vicious elements of society, are accurate and true to life, but they seem to play too large a part in his looks. Page 263. Perhaps too greatly influenced his general judgment of humanity. An excessive sensibility or the capacity for fine feelings and emotion is a marked characteristic of Thackeray, as it is of Dickens and Carlyle. He is easily offended, as they are, by the shams of society, but he cannot find an outlet, as Dickens does, in laughter and tears, and he is too gentle to follow Carlyle in violent denunciations and prophecies. He turns to satire influenced doubtless by 18th century literature, which he knew so well, and in which satire played too large a part. His satire is never personal like Pope's or brutal like Swift's, and is tempered by kindness and humor. But it is used too friendly and generally lays too much emphasis on faults and foibles to be considered a true picture of any large class of English society. Para. Besides being a realist and satirist, Thackeray is essentially a moralist, like Addison, aiming definitely in all his work at producing a moral impression. So much does he revere goodness, and so determined is he that his Pendennis or his Becky Sharp shall be judged at their true value, that he is not content, like Shakespeare, to be simply an artist, to tell an artistic tale and let it speak its own message. He must explain and emphasize the moral significance of his work. There is no need to consult our own conscience over the actions of Thackeray's characters. The beauty of virtue and the ugliness of vice are evident on every page. Para. Whatever we may think of Thackeray's matter, there is one point in which critics are agreed, that he is a master of a pure and simple English style. Whether his thought he be sad or humorous, commonplace or profound, he expresses it perfectly without effort or affectation. In all his work there is a subtle charm impossible to describe, which gives the impression that we are listening to a gentleman. And it is the ease, the refinement, the exquisite naturalness of Thackeray's style that furnishes a large part of our pleasure in reading him.